Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cold Hard Truth NFL podcast. I'm your host, Anish Gupta.
And I'm your co-host, Srikar Rajendran.
The 2022 season is over, so I guess this is our first episode for the 23 season. Just like that, the clock is reset for everybody. The Chiefs obviously are Super Bowl champions, so congrats to them. Hell of a game. We'll obviously talk about it in a bit. But before we get started, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to our sponsor for today's video and all our videos, Manscaped. Amazing products over there. The Lawnmower 4.0 is obviously the leader of them. We've tried it. We love it. Great ceramic blade, wireless charging, amazing technology over there. Great other products that they have, t-shirts, boxers, ball deodorants if you want them. Join over 7 million men worldwide who use Manscaped with this code CHT20 at manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping. That's CHT20. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. Now, let's get into it. The Chiefs won the Super Bowl in a pretty cool fashion. Obviously, they were down 10 to start the second half. Ended up pulling away with a final score of 38-35 with a Butker walk-off field goal with about 6 seconds left. It was quite the entertaining game. Let's first start off with let's kind of get the holding out of the way, right? So I think it was 3rd and 8, and the Chiefs were. I forget where on yard line wise, but they were clearly in the red zone. I mean, this was a really makeable kick. Had they, had the time. It was about 1:30 left. And then, Juju Smith-Schuster on what's called a whip route, which is basically an outside break, and then you break back along the sideline. He got kind of impeded by James Bradberry a little bit, and a lot of people went back and forth with the call. This is kind of one of the first ones I've seen that's more so 50-50. A lot of people thought it was a hold. A lot of people thought it wasn't. And then there was the whole aspect of, do you call that in a game of this magnitude? So Shriek, I'll let you start off. Do you think, 1, it was the right call, and 2, should it have been called?
So 154 left in regulation. Obviously, that play happens. Go on the timeline, and you find everyone saying the NFL is rigged, which, if you've been following this podcast for some time, the NFL is not rigged. And I'll keep saying that, especially as these scripted memes go around here. But yeah, let's talk about it. I do think it was a hold. James Bradberry literally admitted it in the press conference that he held Juju. He tugged on the it was a hold, right? But I understand. Bad ending. You just don't want it to happen in that situation. But let's harken back to the 2018 AFC Championship. D Ford's offside penalty. Okay? I get that that's not the ending you want to that game, but you're supposed to call penalties. What's the job of a referee? You gotta call it. And it was pretty obvious too. So just like the D Ford offsides, which did not work in the Chiefs' favor, I think this Bradberry hold was the right call. But again, I do understand if you felt kind of disappointed by it. I was a little as well, because it kind of set Kansas City up to win the game, but it is what it is. Just don't hold. It's all I can say. It pretty much prevented a wide open touchdown that would have got him in the end zone anyways. So that's all I can say about it. Bradberry literally admitted in the press conference that was a hold, and I'm sorry if it ruined your viewing experience.
Yeah, in the heat of the moment, I was also mad. I was like, dude, really? That's how the season's gonna end, with another penalty? Because considering the AFC Championship kind of ended on that as well. But looking back, I also have stood by this, and will continue to stand by it. It was a hold. I really don't attribute much to what James Bradberry said. Obviously, I think he's just saying that to be, pretty classy and just, tip his hat, or, take some sort of the blame, being a good teammate. But what the ref said, I think, made more sense. They literally stated by the rule book, he impeded his break on the route, and that is a hold. I mean, you cannot, if he's going on a whip route and he's making his break on the outside to the sidelines, and you're impeding him by pulling on him, that is holding. So yes, by rule, it was a hold. And obviously, you wish the refs hadn't called it, but then you're going to go back and forth and say, okay, should this have been a hold? Let's say the Eagles won the Super Bowl, right? So it's just a lot of controversy. I think this, it was just really bad timing, right? I think it was the right call, really bad timing. And yes, it, indirectly may have costed Philadelphia a Super Bowl, but, you got to live with it, right? Like, as you mentioned, it's just how the cookie crumbles, right? Like, you made the penalty, right? You committed the penalty and you rightfully should be called out on it. So yeah, I mean, the refs didn't really decide it, but they did do the right thing and call it, which I guess indirectly did. Yeah, it was kind of the biggest thing, right, that happened in that fourth quarter in terms of just penalty wise. Honestly, like a pretty clean game from both sides. There wasn't anything like, too disruptive. There was some really good plays on both sides of the ball from both teams on offense and on defense. And, I just harp on, Philly just made one mistake that the Chiefs didn't make, right? The fumble, right? Like, the Chiefs allowed 0 sacks, no turnovers. Mahomes was literally 80% completion percentage. He was 13 of 14 in the second half. And Philadelphia just made one mistake, the fumble, right? And I know that was way early in the game, and obviously they ended up, kind of reconciling for it. But I mean, that's just something you cannot have. In the biggest game, Jalen Hurts just essentially lost it, right? Like, there wasn't a really big hit. It was just him losing control of the ball. And for someone who's such a disciplined runner, that really cannot happen, right? I know everybody, is going to talk about how great he played, and he did. Like, I can't take anything away from him, but I just think, I'm sure Philadelphia is looking back on this and thinking, hey, we just gifted them 7 points, especially in a half where the Eagles were dominating, right? 7 of the 14 points came off that turnover in a half that Philadelphia literally owned. So, if I'm Philadelphia, that's kind of what I'm looking back on, right? Just 2 mistakes that, were self-imposed. So that's really what Philadelphia beat themselves here. I think that's what I took away from this. But let's kind of, now throw in some narratives out there, right? So I was kind of alluding to it. Mahomes was 13 of 14 in the second half. He obviously kind of on the bum ankle, he re-aggravated it pretty clearly. I'm sure he got some sort of injection over the second half, but also adrenaline rush definitely helps there. I mean, he was phenomenal. And, just talk about the play calling. I mean, for a guy who's, who's very schematically oriented, hell of a game. Just a lot of different option routes that they ran, and just Andy Reid is so good at setting pre-snap matchups. So like for example, the Kadarius Toney touchdown, he actually got Slay off Toney by motioning him back inside. So Slay had to pick up on the tight end, and then that leaves Kadarius Toney wide open on what's called a spread option route. So, a lot of great play calls by Andy Reid. Anything you took away from that? I think it was just a tale of two halves.
Yeah, the first half, obviously, except for that Nick Bolton scoop and score, is 24-14, right? I'm with you on the whole mistake front of this. The Hurts fumble, definitely costly. That just can't happen in the Super Bowl where you lose it on your own. It was just bizarre play. But it's also just defense in the red zone, especially the secondary, that kind of costed them. It's also the Kadarius Toney punt return, so special teams. You can attribute some blame there. But it's just, I think it was a very frustrating night for Philadelphia. But I don't even think this game wasn't even about Philly for me. I think it was way more about Kansas City. We put in our doc here. I don't know what the question exactly says. I'll go say Mahomes and the Chiefs' legacy is what it says. I'll talk about the Chiefs first and foremost before I focus on the individual. This is always, this is always regarded as a potential dynasty. I wouldn't go there yet. I think if the Chiefs win like one more, then one more in the next few years, then you can consider them a dynasty, but not yet, because all the dynasties usually have 3, right? They still have 2. 2 in 4 years, though. You reach a third in that span. 5 straight AFC championship games. 7 straight division titles. Like, that's really impressive. I'll say this. In the Super Bowl era, and I wrote down a list of teams regarding this, I think they are one of the top 10 teams in the Super Bowl era. They are not better than the 60s Packers, the Steelers of the 70s, 80s Niners.
Whoa.
They're not better than, I'm saying. They're not better than 60s Packers, 70s Steelers, 80s Niners, 90s Cowboys, or 2000s Patriots. I would take them over 2010s Patriots. I have them 6. I think that's where they stand. The top 10 teams of the Super Bowl era. I'm not talking about this season specifically. I'm just talking about over the course since 2019 or 2018, really. But I don't think they're a dynasty just yet, though. I'll let you talk about that for a little bit before I talk about Mahomes.
Yeah, sure. So first, I think a lot of the Chiefs' legacy is coincided with Patrick just because of what they've done in the last 5 years. I'm going to disagree with you first. I think they're better than the 60s Packers. I mean, the Packers won 2, and it was, the first 2, and it was like 8 teams, and like, it was prior to the merger. So, yeah, I'm for surely taking them over the 60s Packers. I mean, yeah, maybe the 70s Steelers, they were just so dominant on both sides. But, yeah, and then the Niners, same kind of thing. But sure, I mean, I think when you put them up with all these teams throughout NFL history, I think that's a cool way to put their legacy in, in terms of historical perspective. But I just wanted to say this. I think the Chiefs actually are, and I don't even care about the third one. And the reason, because the whole dynasty term, yeah, people just refer to it being 3, but I think it's more than that. I think it's what the Chiefs bring. They have now instilled themselves as the clear-cut number 1 overall team in the league. And I think that's what the Patriots aura always gave to me when I was starting off watching football. They didn't have to be in the Super Bowl every year, but because think about it, Tom waited a decade before he won his 4th, right? But this whole persona that the Pats brought, it was every single Sunday, you just kind of expected them to win. Every time they lost, it was always national headlines. And because, it would only happen 3 times a season, 3 or 4 times a year. That's the same thing that's going on with Kansas City. Each time they lose, everyone tends to look back and reflect, okay, what went wrong on this loss? What happened, right? Like, how did this come into fruition, right? So I think that's this whole aura that the Chiefs are bringing is they are the team, to beat in pretty much every aspect. They are the ones that, everyone's got circled on their calendars as, hey, this is the top dog. Even when Cincinnati had won the AFC last year, right? The Chiefs were still regarded as this big top guy in the AFC, even without Tyreek Hill. This is the notion I'm talking about. And also the Chiefs as a whole have had, I believe, a winning season every year since 2013. They've made the playoffs every season except 2014 since that span. So that's 10 years, and they made the playoffs 9 out of the 10 years. Right. So we've actually got a 10-year sample size. I don't think people are realizing what the Chiefs were even before Patrick Mahomes got there. So I think, yes, the Chiefs have really established themselves for a decade as a really formidable team. And now you're seeing it, coincide and cohesively take off with Patrick Mahomes. So that's what I'll say about the Chiefs. I think they, it's weird to kind of coin it as a dynasty, but I do think they are, we were always asking, will we ever see this with, what we had with the Patriots again? I think we're seeing it right now. It's not about just the rings or about, where they are. It's about the aura that they present. And I think the Chiefs are giving people the same glimpse that the Patriots did all throughout the 2000s and the 2010s. So that is where I would, I guess kind of coin it, kind of dynasty in the legacy of that way. I don't think the rings have to fully be indicative of that. Because again, like I said, Patriots went a full decade without winning it, and they were still considered a team to beat pretty much every year. So that's kind of where I'll go from there. So yeah, let's talk about Patrick, right? So, I mean, there's really a lot you can say. I'm just going to throw one stat out there that I feel like people don't actually know. He's 47-3 when his defense allows 27 points or less. Hear that again. 47-3 when his defense allows 27 or less. Yeah, when I heard that stat, that was really cool to me. So yeah, I'll throw out his resume real quick, right? So he's in 5 years, and CBS did a whole comparison to Tom. And it was funny because I saw the comments keep saying, the one Super Bowl Mahomes didn't win was the one Tom beat him in. But so in his first 5 years, he's a 2-time champ. He's a 2-time MVP. He's a 2-time Super Bowl MVP. He is a 1-time Offensive Player of the Year. He, I believe, is a 2 or 3 times passing leader. He has had 4 out of his 5 seasons with 4,700 plus yards and 37 plus touchdowns. And the 1 year he didn't have that, he only played 12 games in the regular season and still boasted a 26 and 4 touchdown interception ratio. So each and every single year, he has been regarded as the best overall quarterback that he has played in all 5 years. That's his resume. And Shriek, yeah, where do you think, how do you think he stacks up, not only maybe all time, but just like where does this trajectory go? Because I'm just gonna say this too. Tom and Peyton didn't win their first MVP till their 30s, right?
Yeah.
Like that's remarkable. So where does this go? I mean, where does this go from here?
Well, here's one more thing. Mahomes joins only Tom Brady and Joe Montana as players with 2 MVPs and 2 Super Bowl MVPs. So I thought that was also something to take note of when you kind of talk about his legacy. I think if Mahomes retired literally tomorrow, he would walk into Canton. Like, I genuinely think he's a Hall of Famer at this point. And I don't know if many people would ever even dispute that after Sunday, which I think is a legacy game, by the way, for Patrick Mahomes. Down 10, in a lot of pain, willing that team to victory. It was very impressive. So let's stack it up against Tom. Let's stack it up against, the GOATs, right? Because I think from now on, Mahomes has nothing left to prove except that, he's chasing GOATs. So Nick Wright actually said that he is already the 3rd best quarterback of all time, behind Brady, and I don't know who was the second, whether it was Montana or Manning.
He said Joe. I think he said Joe, but I still yeah. So
I know you like Manning a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll say this. I don't like the narrative that he needs 7 rings to beat Brady. I'll just say that. I think if Mahomes gets 4, I would seriously start thinking about him over Brady. And I might actually just make that take right off the bat. I think if Mahomes gets 4, he's the GOAT. Because here's my thing. I'll use an NBA analogy in this case. Bill Russell and Michael Jordan. Bill Russell is the most winningest person in the sport. Tom Brady's the most winningest person in his sport. Nobody's going to argue that Bill Russell is better than Michael Jordan because he has 11 rings compared to Michael's 6. Nobody's going to argue. And in this case, I'm not arguing that Brady is better than Mahomes because of 7 rings to 4. If you asked me to pick one player, I'd pick Mahomes with 4 rings. That's just what it is. I know people disagree with that, but I'll just come out and say, I think if Mahomes gets 4, he is the GOAT. And right now, his only purpose for the rest of the career, for the rest of his career, I can't speak today, I think he's just chasing Brady, and that's the way you're going to do it.
Okay, I actually have to throw out the whole Bill Michael argument. One, because Bill played, again, with so many less teams. His team was clear-cut dominant every single time.
It's
and
not
because
like
of him. It was
right. It's not like a strict comparison. I was just throwing out the analogy. Like I just don't think that's a thing.
Tom played in the modern NFL. Like Tom played over the stretch where the NFL was maybe different. It was more defense oriented. It was harder to score. He won in that era. The whole passing era, the whole IQ development era. He's the one who founded it with Peyton. So he won in that era as well. And now he's winning, and he's won a Super Bowl just 2 years ago. So he was winning in the era where it was just air raid, just, a lot of spread, big time passing games. So he has won in all 3. So I think it's going to be hard with the rings argument. My thing is Mahomes has to probably have more accolades overall. Tom only has 3 MVPs. I know that's a lot, but Mahomes already has 2 and he's 27. I think people don't realize this. Quarterbacks tend to hit their prime around 29, 30. That's when we used to, really consider the peak of a lot of their careers. Peyton and Tom, same thing. Like Tom was hitting it at 2007. That's 6 years in. Mahomes is 5 years in, right? Or sorry, 7 was, I think, 7 years in. Peyton, same kind of thing. This whole, 2007, 2008, he was already a decade into the league, man. Mahomes is only 5 years in, so we might not even be getting his best football. I don't think people realize that. Like, he's just starting out, and he's already doing all of this. So, that's one thing to consider. That's why I don't want to rank him right now. I think it's too early. Sure, if you want to go off his resume right now, fine. I would probably put him 4. I would take Manning, Montana, and Tom over him, but I would put him at 4. And I think that's what I would do. But I don't want to rank him just yet because I feel like 4 is not doing him justice for what his trajectory is, right? But if you're going off his 5 years, literally just off 5 years, I would put him 4. That, fine. If you want an answer from me, that's my answer. But Yeah, I think people are just not ready. Like this is going to be, his trajectory is going to skyrocket. Okay, here's another factor that I also want to throw in. People are always going to attribute some of his success to Andy Reid. Now, here's the thing. There are only two quarterbacks who have started and won a Super Bowl with two different teams. That is Tom Brady and that is Peyton Manning. Two guys that in my mind, he is chasing. So there's always going to be maybe some of that narrative that, okay, Mahomes played with one of the best play callers of all time. So, maybe that narrative also gets thrown out there. I'm just going to, we're going to probably discuss some of that maybe 10 years down the road, but that's going to be a narrative that's thrown out there when people talk about Patrick Mahomes. So if he goes to another team and does one, hey, you can eliminate that argument, but that's just one that people will, I think, will make, and one that I might make as well. But yeah, in terms of his legacy and maybe what he needs, I'm not going to say a certain number of rings. But I think overall accolades, yeah, if, Mahomes can pass him in first team all pros, or if he can pass him in MVPs and, Super Bowl, if he has a better winning percentage, right, by the time he retires, because playing 23 years is really hard, especially when Patrick runs a lot more than Tom did. He takes way longer to throw than Tom did. So that leads to, a little bit more hits that he has to take scrambling out of the pocket. We're already seeing, his ankle got hit twice, right? Could that cause some longer term problems? I don't know, but Tom really didn't have to move a lot. That's what made him so durably great. And Tom got the ball out so quick, so he rarely got sacked, for more than 30 times in a season. That's a lot of factors to consider. So we're really projecting here. I just think it's crazy. I'm gonna kind of finish off my Mahomes legacy thing with 1 point. When we started this podcast back in 2019, we either did this in 19 or 20. I think we did
19.
this after. So 20 when Mahomes won the Super Bowl, we did this topic, me and Jack. We said, who would be better over the next 5 years, the Ravens or the Chiefs?
It was after.
And yeah, so yeah, I ended up taking the Chiefs, obviously, because they had the ring. But at the time, the Ravens were 14-2, right? They had unanimous MVP. Things were looking great in the offseason, right, to run it back. It's just something about it when you get that one. It just increases your, experience. It increases your trajectory as a team over the next few years. Something about getting that one. And I will also say one thing. Quarterbacks who have debuted in their Super Bowl, the last 17 have yet to make it back. Mahomes won his debut. Tom won his debut, right? The last 17 who have made their debut have yet to make it back. Now, a lot of people think Hurts and Burrow will. I'm just going to throw it out there. People said the same thing about Russell Wilson and Matt Ryan after they lost.
Mm-hmm.
We have not seen him since. So I'm just going to throw that out there, and I'm going to finish it off with that. But yeah, that's kind of my take on Mahomes' legacy. I just don't want to really talk about it too much till we get towards, think about it, guys. He's 27. Tom is 43, so that's 16 years. We could that's a 16-year difference, right? Mm-hmm. Even if we get Mahomes for 10, right? His contract expires when he's 37. Even if we get him for 10, I mean, that's still, he could double all of this. He could triple all of it if he keeps the same pace. So, there's time. That's, I think, what we need to just appreciate what's going on right now. Mahomes is doing his thing. I kind of want to use this time to kind of reflect and, just look back on Tom and all the guys that are kind of moving on, because Mahomes has got time. That's kind of where I'm going to end it. You got anything on it?
No, but I like where you were going with not going back. I wanted to talk about the Eagles a little bit and where they're going to go from here.
Yeah.
First of all, forget all the stuff about an easy schedule and whether Jalen Hurts is elite. Philadelphia has their guy. They have their franchise quarterback. And the Eagles are good enough to beat anybody on any field. But I will say, this offseason will be challenging for Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman. For Sirianni, he's already lost both of his coordinators, Jonathan Gannon's with Arizona, Shane Steichen's with the Colts. As for Roseman, there is the matter of a huge looming extension for Jalen Hurts, one that's being rumored to pass Josh Allen's contract. So that's big. Then there's Javon Hargrave, James Bradbury, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. All those guys are hitting free agency. Philadelphia is dealing with a tight cap situation, but of course, the good news is Philly has 2 first-round picks. You have a loaded roster with young talent, one of the best front offices in football, right? So it is going to be a pretty uncomfortable offseason for Roseman, but if there's anyone who you can trust to kind of figure out the best path forward, it's that guy. So it'll be tumultuous, but I think they'll figure things out.
I'm going to say 1 point for this point, and it's really just this. I think Philly, I'm really hoping they don't do this, and because a lot of teams try and do it, is try and run it back with the same team. You lost. Get better. Okay? Like that's my whole point. The Bengals were all about keeping their core when they lost the Super Bowl, right? Keeping Jesse Bates, keeping this guy, right? Like they were all about keeping the same thing. And I mean, I know they improved the offensive line.
They were a game
right?
away.
So they got right, but they were so concerned with keeping the defense the same, right? Maybe getting the O-line. So they fixed their quote unquote one problem, right? But I think for Philadelphia, it's just don't get complacent, right? I think Philadelphia knows like the NFC is pretty weak, right? Compared to the AFC, and I think they should be the top dog going into it next year, unquestionably. But yeah, I just think with those 2 first-round picks, that's a big deal, and it's really hard to I think cap-wise they'll be fine. I think they can easily kind of maneuver through that. But yeah, I would pay Jalen. I would. I think he's a guy that's already shown tremendous poise and pride, and I think the problem is since he's a second-round pick, he's got 1 year less than Joe Burrow does, so that's why you have to pay him now. I think I would pay him. So yeah, I think the Eagles will be fine. Just get complacent. That's all I would probably say. And they've got some looming questions, but I'm not too concerned. So yeah, let's kind of move on to maybe let's tackle this one first, right? And let's stick with Jalen real quick. I think he's, emerged a lot, like really risen up the ranks, and, people start to consider him a top 5 quarterback, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Okay, here's the thing. Before this game, I would have said he's like top 8 in that top 10 for sure. He sold me, man. He sold me with this game. And I'll say this. A player's true colors are revealed in the biggest moments. For Jalen Hurts, this was his moment, okay? Put that fumble to the side for a second. Obviously, horrible play, but just look at the rest of that game. I mean, he was really on it. So here is my top 5 now. 1, Mahomes, obviously. 2, I'm going Burrow. 3, I'm still going to go with Allen. I'm going to put Hurts at 4, and I'm going to put Herbert 5. I think this game definitely sold me on Jalen Hurts. You guys know how I've felt about him in the past. I've been a fan of the Eagles. With Hurts specifically, I've been, I thought he was good. I didn't think he'd take this big of a leap, right? So, yeah, he sold me. I think he is definitely a top 5 quarterback.
Yeah. So, all right. Yeah. Let's kind of look at it real quick. I'm just going to put this list and say these are the 5 quarterbacks that I would take going into next year. I'm not reflecting back. I'm just going to say these are the 5 that I would take. If I were starting a team or if I was doing a draft and I said, okay, these 5 teams get all quarterbacks first, here's what I would go with in order if I was a GM and I had like some fantasy draft or something, okay? I'd go 1, Patrick. I'd go 2, Joe Burrow. I'd go 3, Josh. And 4, I would go Trevor Lawrence.
What?
And then 5, I would go Jalen.
Yeah. Over Hurts?
So,
already made a
yeah. So I'm a big Jalen Hurts guy. You know this. I've invested in him since he got drafted. But yeah, I would still take Trevor over him. And the reason for that is I think Jalen has benefited a lot from gap schemes that Sirianni and Sykin have developed. And then 2, the roster around him. He's obviously made him great. But yeah, I think that's why. So yeah, I have Hurts in my 5. But yes, I have Trevor at 4 and Hurts at 5. So that means Herbert's out of my top 5. He's 6. But yeah, those are the guys that I would take going into next season. Those are the 5 in that order. And I might move Josh down as much as I love him. I might move him down, but I'll keep it like that. But yeah, I think we both have him there. You're right. This game was tremendous, especially your first Super Bowl. The nerves are there, especially after the last time he was in a championship game. He got benched, right? So little bit of that PTSD, but he played terrific. I mean, the throws that he made when he needed to, especially the Devontae Smith one, the AJ Brown one on the post. I mean, it was double coverage, but he still let him open a little bit. So yeah, I think that's what we got to say about Jalen. Yeah, people are gonna come at me for the whole T-Law thing.
I don't know about that. I mean, for what it's worth, I have Lawrence 6, but
that's my guy. So yeah, I mean, well, technically the three to five are all the guys that I've really loved coming out. So it's cool to see him make everyone's top 5 list. So let's switch over here. We have this little segment for I guess the 4 championship teams. Shrikar kind of came up with it. So you know how these things go, right? It's really hard to predict how the championship matchups go. Ironically, we got 3 out of the 4 to repeat this past season, right? 3 out of the 4 teams who were in the championship games in 21 came back in 2022. Are we going to see the same thing in 2023, Shriek? So let's go first with the NFC side. Will the Eagles or the Niners, either one of them make the championship games, both of them make the championship games, or neither?
Yeah, so it's Eagles, Niners, or the field. I tell you what, I'm taking the Eagles or the Niners. I think the Eagles are better than I'd rank them higher than the Niners going into next year. But I'd take one of those 2 teams over the field. Because if we look at it division by division, the NFC North is like a Rodgers trade away from being bad. Like, I like the Bears, okay? I like the Lions. The Vikings, I don't think are going to be representing the NFC. The Packers with Jordan Love, I don't think will be representing the NFC. The Bears will take a jump. The Lions I like, but not good there. The NFC South, no one's going to represent the NFC there, although I do like the Panthers. The NFC West, the Rams, I think, will bounce back. Obviously, you have the Niners. The Seahawks, respectable. What's their ceiling? The Cardinals, horrible. And then you look at the East. The Giants are good, but you need a lot more to be up there with the Eagles and Niners. You need the Cowboys, maybe, but again, what is their ceiling? The Commanders, no. And then and then the Eagles. So it's just I'd take one of those 2 teams over the field. I think this is a relatively easy NFC for them.
Okay. This one's really tough. It's really early. I will say this. I don't think both go back. I'm for sure on that. I don't think both go back. I think there's just going to be a bad matchup that happens, and whether it's in the wild card or the divisional, I think one of these 2 teams fall there. But I will say this. I think it's more likely than not than one of them goes back as of right now. But there are just teams that I can see making a full-time jump. Detroit, Carolina, if they get the right guy. I can see those type of leaps that can happen, right? Especially the one Philadelphia made. I think Detroit is really similar on that type of path. They just need to improve a little couple holes on the roster. But yeah, so there's a lot of this X factor in the NFL. Remember, there's always also like a worst to first team, right? So, maybe, okay, I don't expect the Cardinals to do it. The Commanders probably won't. But, in the South, I think the Panthers were the worst. No, sorry. I think Atlanta was. But, Atlanta and the Saints were. But, yeah, so maybe not in the NFC, there's a worst to first, but there's always some team that takes a surprise leap. So, yeah, I'll say one of them makes it. But yeah, I don't think both. I'm just gonna go out and say it. Don't see a rematch happening. If it does, damn, I'll take my L. But yeah, I don't see it happening.
Again, for the record,
the AFC side, real quick.
Yeah, I was just gonna agree with that. I think the Lions and Panthers are gonna make big leaps. I think Chicago will also make a big leap next year. But yeah, I mean, it is pretty tough to do it this early, but on paper, it's kind of looking that way. But yeah, let's move on to the AFC.
Yeah, this one's a little bit trickier, right? So Chiefs, Bengals, does one of them make it? Both of them make it? Or neither?
Well, I'll say right off the bat, the Chiefs are going to make it because of Mahomes. They will be in the AFC Championship game. The Bengals, oh my goodness. Right now, I'm going to say getting 3 straight AFC Championship games with the same matchup is so hard. Like, I don't think the Bengals will make it, but I really like the Bengals. That's the thing. The Bills are a really weird team. Okay, here's what I'll say. I think the gap between the Chiefs and the Bengals and the Bills is pretty drastic. I think it's pretty big. The Chiefs and Bengals are definitely the two top dogs in the AFC for me. So I will take the Chiefs and Bengals over the field, right? But I think only one of those teams has their spot secure in the AFC Championship game, and I think it's the Chiefs.
Okay. I'm gonna throw this out there. Obviously, I think it's a little bit more likely that the AFC switches up just because of how many good teams there are there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw this out.
Jacksonville.
Mahomes has never Mahomes has never played a road playoff game in his career. It's either been neutral site or at home. If Mahomes has to do that, we could see some shakeup, right? Like, we have not seen that yet. That's like maybe one question also we haven't really been answered, right? Like, he's never really had to be fully tested in the playoffs on the road in a tough crowd. You know, he's never had that, right? And kudos to him. He's won the games to get there, right? Like, I can't knock him for not getting the 1 seed. Or sorry, I can't knock him for getting the 1 seed. But I will say this. Will we finally see Mahomes play his first road playoff game next year? I think that's a very real possibility. Like, the problem is the Chiefs' schedule is pretty favorable in the sense that
who's getting the 1 seed over them?
Yeah, so that's the question. Well, it's hard to put in fruition, right? Like, did we really predict the Titans to get the 1 seed over Kansas City? Like, no, right? And it's so funny that the Titans, who had it, lost. So the Chiefs ended up playing the AFC Championship game at home anyway, right? Mm-hmm. So it's going to be crazy to see, even in 2019 when Mahomes won, right? They weren't the first seed. They got the bye, but the Ravens were, and they lost, right? So every time they haven't been the 1 seed, the 1 seed is lost in the playoffs. So it's pretty funny. Like, I guess just it's been so ironic that they haven't really had to play that. But you're right. I would probably pick the Chiefs to represent again. I don't know about Cincinnati. Just again, so many good teams in the AFC. Again, the Ravens are going to be out for blood if they keep Lamar. So yeah, Chiefs I think for one, but I'll go with the feel on the other one as well.
I'd take Jacksonville over Baltimore. That is a team I forgot to mention. They're 1 step away. I think they're there as well.
It's gonna be a fun offseason hyping them up. Okay, let's move on from our Super Bowl. We are officially going into the 2023 season. No more recap. Let's look forward, fellas. And we're gonna start off with we do like all the time. It's just a recycling of different guys. It's QB Carousel. I am a quarterback lover and quarterback advocator. So let's start off. We've got 4 guys to kind of talk about maybe a team that we think would be great for them. And let's start off with Lamar Jackson, right? We talked about him a lot recently, especially with the whole, offseason being shaken out. Apparently, he wasn't in talks with the whole offensive coordinator search. Just a lot of murky waters with Lamar in Baltimore as of late. So, Shriek, I'll let you start off. Do you see a team in particular that should go after him, or do you think he stays? Like, what's the future look like for Lamar Jackson these next couple months?
I think the Falcons and Panthers are 2 teams to look at in trade talks, but as of what I think will happen, I think the Ravens are just going to find a way to bring him back. I don't see a trade coming. They will use the tag. I think that's a given at this point. But what happens after is, as you said, really murky, because I do think that over the summer they will end up finding some middle ground, because with a talent like that, it's just so hard to say, all right, see ya, give me the picks. It's like you got to try. So I think at some point, Eric DaCosta and Lamar Jackson will find equal footing here. But if he does end up getting traded, I would love Carolina, honestly. I would love to see him there, but I think the Falcons and Panthers are 2 spots that, could be after him.
Wow. I really like Atlanta here as a trade piece. I really like it. And here's why. I think it fits every box and it checks off everything. Different conference, so I think the Ravens would be willing to do it. 2, they've got the capital, and I think Kyle Pitts would be interesting piece to move. And I know you're saying, okay, they already have Mark Andrews. What do the Ravens do? Multiple tight end sets, and Kyle Pitts can play X. He's 6'6", and he's like 240, and he runs like a 4.4. So he's he can play X. I think that would be a really cool thing that the Ravens would have going on. But yeah, I think Atlanta would be a really cool piece. I actually don't like Carolina as much as you do. One, and this is coming from the Frank Reich praiser. But no, I actually don't like it because I think Carolina should draft. I think they should get a guy who's cheap, right? Don't have to put themselves in cap hell already with a quarterback that, might have some questions coming in. And Reich works better with pocket passers. So that's just kind of a little bit of a scheme dishonesty, a little bit. Though RPOs that Frank Reich invented back in 2017 with Doug E.P. would be great with Lamar Jackson. But it's okay. I think Atlanta, as you mentioned, is a really cool piece to consider if Lamar were to get traded. I just don't see the Ravens. Why would you trade him to the AFC, right? Like,
Yeah.
just, so I think Atlanta would be really cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, let's move on. Aaron Rodgers, Cal alum, paid for our locker room. We'll always love the guy. But again, same thing, murky in Green Bay. I mean, this is like, we're seeing signs. We've been seeing signs since freaking 2020. So it's been like 3 years, but I mean, like, could this really, like, this is, the kind of the first time, like, we're seeing Jordan Love be talked about more as like a potential starter. And, the Packers, this is the first time, each of the 3 years that Rodgers has been in trade talks, they were the 1 seed and he was an MVP candidate or he won it. This time he was not any of those things, right? And Devontae Adams is already out the door, right? Like, a little bit murky. So what's the team that you're thinking?
Well, to clarify on Rodgers okay, so following 2020, when those trade rumors were being brought up, I said, no way. Like, they're not going to do that. 2021, again, I said, no way, it's not going to happen. Going into this year, there was some merit to it, but I was like, no, they're still going to find a way to bring him back. This is the year where I'm like, yeah, he's gone. Like, he is out of Green Bay, and I think they should just see what they got in Jordan Love. So I think this Rodgers move is screaming Jets all the way. And the Raiders will also probably be involved here, but New York has the cap flexibility, a glaring need at quarterback, which has mainly existed since Joe Namath left them in the mid-70s. Look, the Jets have all their draft picks both now and in the future. With Rodgers, I think they would definitely be a playoff team with a pretty good ceiling too. I think they could make some noise in the playoffs if they get there. And again, for the Jets, just think about what it would mean for that organization. They would be, relevant, like really relevant again over the Giants for the first time in like a decade. They would be that team in New York. So I think that definitely means something to Woody Johnson and the Jets team. I mean, Rodgers immediately puts them there. And also, just the Jets have real weapons. Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, terrific defense. You also have Nathaniel Hackett. He's been close with Rodgers since they worked in Green Bay since 2019. And just for the Packers, it's time. Again, he's 39. Jordan Love is on the last year of his rookie deal, pending that fifth-year option. And Green Bay is about to go through a serious cap crunch. So I think for the Jets, for the Packers, it just makes sense for all parties here to make the move and send him to New York.
All right. Yeah, you're right. This kind of comes down to the Jets or the Raiders. Let me make a case for both real quick. Yeah, you're right with the Jets. I'm not going to touch on anything you said because I think they're all great points. Another thing is the defense, right? Like, this is a really good defense that Rodgers would have. And I think, yeah, the Jets have kind of been in the sense that we're a quarterback away, right? A lot of games that they lost, they were 7-4. I think they lost like 5 in a row or something, or 6 in a row. All of them were close, right? It was just like, hey, if we had this one guy, if he made that extra play, we could get there. And obviously, A-Rod is a guy who can make that extra play. So the Jets certainly are, in for discussion. I'm going to make a case for the Raiders real quick. Obviously, Devontae, that's just one thing. I mean, I think it's just, for a quarterback of his age, right? You want something that's some sort of stability going to a new team, considering you've been there for 17 years or 18 years with the Green Bay Packers. So you want some sort of stability. Also wanted to throw out, sorry, with the Jets, Brett Favre went there. Rodgers could go there. Cool little segment. But yeah, for the Raiders, Devontae, right? I think roster-wise, too, the Raiders have a sneaky, interesting roster. I think on defense, they've got a really solid pass rush. Secondary needs all work. We've been saying that literally since I was a little kid. So, that's always just a given with the Raiders. But the offensive line, I think, is a little bit better in LV than it is in New York. Even though they're both, could improve. then yeah, the weapons in LV are better. So I think it would just be a little bit of a more seamless transition for Aaron Rodgers to go to LV, which is why I think they're favored right now. But I do hope he goes to one of those two. I think it would be great, right? For the AFC East, we'd see Rodgers and Allen this year. And then from the AFC West, whew, man, you want to talk about, like that. That's a cool division, especially with Denver making some moves too. That's a cool division. Yeah, let's move on. Derek Carr has been released, so he is fully free. I mean, he can go wherever he wants. And I think the Raiders did right by him by doing that, right? I think that was their kind of, final salute to him. Although he was the losingest quarterback in the first 9 years as a starter, he, gave him some good memories, right? Namely 2016 and maybe, the 2021 season where he took him to the playoffs. So he had some good times there. Never really had a good defense, to be honest. Was done dirty sometimes in a lot of games, but as I said also too, there's just always something missing about him that I just think will prevent him from representing a Super Bowl. But some teams aren't maybe aiming for that. Some teams are maybe just trying to win the division, which is why I think the NFC South should be in play for this guy. I'm going to throw out the Saints as a team. I know he's about to meet with the Jets, but I'm just going to throw out the Saints for me. The Saints are a really interesting team, right? So I think this is like back-to-back, 6-7 win seasons. They won 9-8 last year. But yeah, so the Saints always find ways to win games. And yeah, Andy Dalton actually for a stretch led the league in completion percentage. So it wasn't like the quarterback was doing him dirty. But I think Derek Carr is a step up from Andy Dalton as well as Jameis Winston. And he's proven he can win games. And now in a lackluster division where you don't have to go against Mahomes twice a year and Herbert a year, you've got a pretty solid case for the Saints to do something here, right? The Bucs are in free fall without Tom. The Falcons, same kind of thing. We don't know where they're headed. And then, yeah, the Panthers are looking up. But, hey, the Saints still play the Panthers tight. I think roster-wise, you can say they're both really solid. So, yeah, I'm going to make a case for the Saints.
I was also going to say the Saints because, again, I have Rodgers going to the Jets. But I'll say this. I put this in the chat, too. The Raiders managed to get nothing for a top 15 quarterback who's basically on a year-to-year deal. So I think this was a pretty horrible, showcase in asset management for that Raiders front office. But
yeah,
look, Carr is
right by him, but he didn't need to.
Yeah, Carr is now the best free agent QB on the market by a mile. I'm going to agree here. I'm going to say the Saints. I do think there will be like a third mystery team that just pops up out of nowhere and he visits with them. But if I had to make a prediction, I think he does reunite with Dennis Allen and he signs with the Saints. And that would make things interesting in the NFC South, as you said. I think Saints and Panthers deadlocked at 1 and 2. But it'll be an interesting, battle to see who wins the division there. But let's move on. I think the next quarterback is someone that I have had a long history with. That is Jimmy Garoppolo.
Both of us have had a long history.
Yeah, it's actually the last quarterback on our list. Look, so this year he doesn't have the hurdles of offseason shoulder surgery or, that cap hit that's kind of standing in the way. Look, I think teams would be, I think teams would not be smart if they just didn't look at Jimmy, because I don't know. He's shown he can win you games. That's literally all I can say. We've talked about Jimmy multiple times on the podcast, so I'm trying to think of things to kind of say what I haven't been saying. But okay, in terms of teams, the Jets obviously make sense with Saleh. The Texans make sense now with DeMeco Ryans. You look at that Shanahan tree, they're going to be looking at a guy like Jimmy. So if I had to make my prediction right now, I will go ahead and say that Jimmy signs with the Texans. I think the Commanders are also in play there for Jimmy Garoppolo. Anyone who needs a bridge quarterback, also Jimmy's your guy. But I think the Texans would be smart to give him a look and sign him, because that immediately gives you an option. Obviously, they're going to draft a quarterback as well. But the Texans stick out because I'm not going with the Jets because of Rodgers. I think Houston's the move here, and I think Ryans gets his guy.
Yeah, I think Jimmy has constantly been done dirty by the Niners. I will defend him day in and day out. And yeah, so I'm gonna ask you this one question: is he unrestricted this offseason? Do you know for
Yeah, he's
2023?
unrestricted.
Yeah, okay. So this makes it interesting. I'm actually gonna throw a team that you maybe not were thinking of, Tampa Bay.
I was thinking of
I
them.
would
Yeah, I forgot to
love
say
him.
that. Hmm.
I would love him in Tampa Bay. Yeah, as you or yeah, you were kind of alluding to it, right? Need a bridge quarterback. I think he'd be great. You can push the ball down the field to those guys. It's kind of a fill-in, right? For Tom, obviously he's not as good, but at least Tampa has some sort of shoe-in, and they've already shown that roster-wise they can hang with the NFC South. And if Tampa wants to continue to win it, right? I mean, we could see it again, kind of go down to maybe a 9-win team wins this division. I think you can easily win 9 games with Jimmy, right? And I know Byron Leftwich is gone, but new offensive coordinator Jimmy Garoppolo is a solid quarterback. I personally think he's better than what most people think, but he is a solid quarterback. So that's where I have him. Tampa. I think Tampa would be really cool. Houston, as you said, would be cool. If any team somehow needs a backup because Jacoby Brissett is on a 1-year deal and he may not come back. Cleveland would love to have. I would love to have Jimmy Garoppolo in Cleveland, considering we offered a first-round pick to the Patriots all those years ago, and they said nope. We're gonna give him to the Niners for a second. So we were done dirty there. Maybe this time we won't be, but I'm just kidding. I don't think the Browns are gonna go get him. But yeah. Just hopefully Jimmy G finds a landing spot and starts. I've heard some rumors about the Titans. I don't know. Maybe that could be a thing. We'll see how it shakes up with Ryan Tannehill, who, again, big fan of, by the way. Yeah, we'll see how this all shakes out. But, to kind of wrap this up, we're finally into the new year. It's reset the clock, so you're going to be hearing me talk about the Browns all year long. So have fun with that. But yeah, with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and we're excited to kick this off this new year starting. Been really busy this last couple weeks, but seriously, I've got some plans for the draft coming up, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. We've been the Cold Hard Truth NFL podcast, and we will see you guys next time.